Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast, the official podcast of Pineland, broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location deep inside Pineland, where we discuss faith, family, finances, firearms, freedom, food, and everything else in between, with those who believe in living free and living out the values that made this country free. All right, welcome to the Pinelander Podcast. My name is Paul Lefevre. I'm here with my ranger buddy, Mike Blackburn, and today is Friday, March 3rd, 2023. Here we are, just cruising right along in 2023. It's wild how fast this year's going.
Yeah, absolutely. Put that winter behind us. I mean, I live down here in Pineland for a reason. I like warm weather. So
Absolutely.
I always like them when it starts warming up.
Yeah, and I think we saw, the Puxatawny Phil, I think saw a shadow. So I think we had, that much. The winter will be a little bit longer.
Did you see they were trying to replace him with a human or something?
Really?
Yeah, they thought it was like I don't know.
Not even Puxatawny Phil is now safe.
Yeah, I mean it's like
So
the PETA guys. Yeah, the PETA guys are just upset that the groundhog had to do that every year. I guess I don't know.
Well, you know what PETA stands for? People eating tasty animals. Now it takes courage to say that. Right?
Nice little transition.
Yeah. So today we're moving right along with our 5 warrior virtues, and we're looking at today is our 5th virtue, which is courage. This is the first virtue you think of when you think of a warrior. I mean, it's the very first thing I would think. Most people.
I like the way they're sandwiched. Honor up front and close it with courage.
Yeah.
So,
and this is. When I was a kid, I put this out in the book also, is I loved the Iliad. I still do. The Iliad, Homer's Iliad, 8th century BC epic about heroes. They got the Trojan War, especially, Hector and Achilles, and just that courage that just displayed. Last time we were together, we talked about temperance and how, these work together. And so I think when we do this podcast, maybe some different aspects of courage are going to be brought out more than what you would normally think of. And that was the idea behind the book too, is most people think, this a chapter on courage is going to be really short, right? But it's more than meets the eye.
there's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot more there. And what I also wanted to do with courage is not just to begin with definitions, but then go back to Bushido, go back to antiquity, look at the old ballads and the poems and the old writings, and get their ideas behind this too.
Yeah, there is nothing new about courage.
Exactly. So let me just, if I could, start off with this quote, just by Winston Churchill. He says, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." And that's true. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. So the idea is you sense fear, and you laugh in the face of it. You laugh in the face of death, and you just go on anyway. And certainly there's different aspects of courage, not just facing death, as we'll see. But when we look at warriors, we're the guys that run to the sound of the guns. And so it's a very real reality that we could be quartered by the hands of war, could be blown up, could be killed, and so that's definitely the aspect of the real possibility of death.
Yeah, I think we've always honored that. I think we've always done a good job of honoring physical courage. But I think, to me at least, what I find most interesting today really is because in the environment today, I think moral courage is what really stands out. And when you see that person that is willing to throw it all away for what's right, to me that's pretty impressive, and sometimes I think more impressive than physical courage.
Absolutely. So I didn't know how we were going to get to this, but the first thing when I think of with moral courage, one of my heroes is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And he's interesting because I think this will segue into what we're also talking about. But if you don't know Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he was a Lutheran pastor in Germany at the time that Hitler was taking power in the 30s. He was the first guy really to start speaking out against Hitler. And, that caused him a lot of trouble. He had to relocate. But he started what's called the Confessing Church because the German National Church really was Nazified. It removed the cross and replaced it with the Hakenkreuz, the swastika, and they removed the Bible and replaced it with Mein Kampf. And they helped the German church, this is a known thing, helped the Hitler's Third Reich, the regime, round up the Jews and shuttle them off to their deaths. And, Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw the evil of the regime and he spoke out against it. And then here's where I'm going with this. His moral courage was this. He started off as a conscientious objector. And if you know that term, he didn't believe that killing was ever right, even as a soldier. But he went from that to taking part in the attempt to kill Hitler. And what brought him to that point was moral courage.
Yeah, that's a heck of a transition there, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. And he saw, he saw the difference between killing and murder. And he saw that it was righteous to rightfully take him out.
Take out the boogeyman.
Yeah. And, since we're on moral courage, there's three aspects of courage I wanted us to look at. One is moral courage, one is mutual courage, and one is mental courage. But since we're on moral courage, equally impressive, and I bring this out in the book, is I use Miley, the Miley Massacre. It's very famous. You have Lieutenant Colley, you have a platoon of infantry, and they end up in an area of Vietnam where they suspect a lot of Viet Cong presence. And it's the village of My Lai. So it's very famous. They do the village. So they do the village, and as this is happening, one of the helicopter pilots that's screening, I guess, this strike, this operation is happening where they're murdering these folks. And that's what happens because there was no Viet Cong in the village. And, Colley, the lieutenant, this platoon commander, just ordered these people's deaths. So we're talking kids, old men and women. And so as that's going on, one officer, Hugh Thompson, saw that and landed his plane, his helicopter, in between Lieutenant Colley's troops who are waylaying folks and some other people that are just they're running for their lives out of the village. And it was seeing that, he knew he could do something. He knew he had to do something. Something had to stop. And so he had the moral courage to set his helicopter down, and even ordered his door gunner if they're coming after these people just to shoot them up. And so he really stuck it out there because he knew it was wrong, and he was trying to do what at the time looked like nobody else was going to do. And obviously, terrible situation. The massacre left 500 Vietnamese civilians dead. And but the beautiful thing about this story here, the redeeming quality about this story is the warrant officer, Hugh Thompson, actually did something. He did something that looked like he was taking a stand when everybody else was just kind of not doing the right thing. And so I think about this with moral courage. If you think about this in the church, in this day of woke, where we have an immoral implosion, when you take a stand for Christ, you take a stand for what the Bible proclaims, then you are in the majority. So your one man with God is in the majority, and so you're on the side of right. They say, it's funny. They say, "Oh, you're not on the right side of history," when they say those things. But this guy was on the right side, He definitely, if we could use that expression to redeem it, because it's been dragged to the mud, this guy was on the right side of history. This Warrant Officer Thompson did the right thing.
I think it's rare, and I think it's extremely rare today. I used to get frustrated thinking about the fact that so many people kind of go along to get along. It's always been sort of a, something that's just frustrating for me to watch. But I think I'm probably not being realistic about, what really is how, the pressures and what have you that people are under. And I say that because I listened to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. one time. He was talking to a guy by the name of Brian Rose doing an interview, and RFK, if I could just call him that, he said something that really kind of resonated with me. He was like, he had sort of sympathy for people like that because he understood that in at least in his position, RFK is fine. I mean, he's not, he's gonna be okay. Okay, people have gone after him, trying to cancel him and cancel culture and what have you. I mean, he's impervious to that. You're not gonna touch the guy. Okay, he's a Kennedy and he's got plenty of friends and he's got a network and he's gonna be okay. And he realizes that he's in a pretty safe, comfortable position. Most people are not. So for a lot of people, moral courage means giving up everything, their livelihood, their job, their friends, church, sometimes family members. So, a lot of times people will come up to you privately and go, I support you. I believe in everything that you believe. But they're not going to come out and publicly make a stand because it would be just detrimental to them. So I think we have to realize that. So again, I think one of the reasons why when I see someone just throw it all away, and we had an interview recently where we saw a Marine colonel do just that.
Yeah.
To me, it's very impressive because that's exactly what he ended up happening. He lost his marriage, he lost his career, he lost his retirement. For what he believed was right, and I think that's why that is so impressive to me. But I think sometimes, and I think that's the reason why when you do see someone do that, you realize what they're willing to give up.
Yeah, that's an important point because you look at Stu Scheller.
Yep.
And how he was willing to take a stand on that. I mean, look what he gave up, a promising career.
He was close to retirement.
Absolutely. But yeah, 17 years in, and then just say, you know what? I mean, a lot of people would have said, hey, you got 17 years in, man.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, he got those phone calls.
Yeah.
What are you doing, man? Just say you had a bad day and, apologize.
And there have been many careers that have ended. I think of, I have so many examples I can think of. People doing the right thing and they know, hey, this is going to cost me. This is going to cost me a potential next rank or whatever it is. Yep. But I know it's right. I need to do this. And for conscience sake, this has to happen. And I believe he did that for his conscience sake and also because it was the right thing to do. Somebody needed to do it. I mean, that's the idea. If not enough people are doing the right thing and they just said, okay, whatever, and the next stupid thing comes down the pike, then we're just herded up like animals in cages, like Planet of the Apes. Like if we just let them do all the dumb stuff, then that's what's going to happen. If there's no pushback.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah, thank God for the.
There has to be patriotic
people
pushback
like that.
to the stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah, that taked moral courage to do that, and I think, I mean, look at moral courage too, because most people, like you said, is they how'd you say it? They get along.
Well, there's he brought up two groups, and that was the first group was the group that even though they supported what was morally right, they were not going to publicly make a stand. They were going to quietly sort of hang out in the shadows, if you will.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't willing to lose everything due to it. But the other group that he talked about was sort of, for lack of a better example, sort of the Stockholm syndrome type that sort of buys into the nonsense and almost becomes sympathetic with the system that's perpetuating this sort of evil, if you will. And there may have been a lot of that in maybe Nazi Germany as well. I'm not sure if a lot of people sort of kind of just bought in. So
Absolutely.
any sort of threat to this evil apparatus, they were willing to attack.
Yeah.
To defend their protectors, right? So there's really the two groups I think most people probably fall into, and that's why at least for me, I think for most men, physical courage is easier than the moral courage that you're speaking of, because I think it's very easy to get in one of those two camps. Where you're sort of involved in it and defending it and sort of the buy-in, or you're in a position where you're not willing to suffer the consequences of taking a stand.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the on that note with the Third Reich, I mean, there is, of course, we know about the night of the long knives, Kristallnacht. There's a lot of people that got taken out early on, and a lot of it's competition and people that weren't going to stand for it. They killed them all. And, so that's the extreme example. But then you have many other examples in history, enough people doing the right thing. And then that rights the ship, gets us back on course. So the other thing I did with this book is I wanted to start with mental courage. And and the reason why I did that is because I believe in the primacy of the intellect. So just like in temperance,
So I know you're going to go into this, but is this like the mental courage?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's an education aspect to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So you need to get up off your butt and assess the facts, right? Take in the facts. But what else is that? I mean, what is that? How is that different from moral courage?
So mental courage differs from moral courage in the sense that in mental courage, you're getting your mind right for, this is where it is almost antithetical to staying in the present. And so Stoics do this too. Stoics would imagine something that could be absolutely catastrophic. And you kind of go there in your mind and you go, okay, I can kind of sense what that would be like. And I've kind of already gone there, so I can deal with that.
Yeah, so it's a mental preparation.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, I can see myself dying. I'm putting on my armor and all that, and here we go. And I can already see my body just waylaid, and they'll put me in that body bag right there, which I'm putting in the truck, and that's okay.
Are you sort of role-playing scenarios?
Yeah, loosely, but it's kind of it's like
or mental role play,
a mental map, a mental role play.
Yeah.
And what I loved about this is why I love Bushido, right? And I think if you're a warrior, you should love this aspect of it, not the seppuku and some of the other stuff. We can leave that, right? But the mental preparation and the mental courage that's found in the Bushido code is fantastic, and I have that firmly couched here in this chapter. So let me just tease some of that out.
Yeah.
Right. So you have let me just mention a couple of books. The first one, you have Inazo Nitobe, and he's writing Bushido, about the Japanese warrior philosophy, Bushido. And Nitobe, he observes this. I think it just encapsulates it. He says, for the samurai, a sense of calm trust in fate, a quiet submission to the inevitable, that stoic composure in sight of danger or calamity became a kind of friendliness with death. If that sounds kind of strange, but you're familiar with it. You're familiar with death, all sides of death, so it's okay. And so death to a samurai was not the end of...
It's not an unknown. It's something that he spends quite a bit of time contemplating and is comfortable with.
You're very comfortable with it. It's not like, oh gosh, don't go there. They definitely went there. So they contemplate it and also contemplated it and also knew that it was inevitable. It's going to happen. And I think what's funny about our culture now is if you want to notice a taboo today, it's a death. You can basically talk about anything else and it could be really freaking weird. But you talk about death, it's a taboo. Like, why'd you go there? And you can talk about anything else, it's nuts.
Yeah. There's always been, there's always been a fear of death.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just everybody has that fear, don't they?
They do, but the idea, the old Puritans, they have an expression that you die well. You die well. That's the goal, is to live well, to die well. And
because
that is exactly what Bushido Code
because the
says.
thinking is we're all born and we're all gonna die.
Yeah.
And we really have no say so in when we go, but we do have some say so in how we go. Would that be
Absolutely.
an accurate sort of?
Yeah. I mean, as much as depends upon us. Here's the idea also with Bushido. The idea was not to just be callous with you or your fellow warrior's life. Right? That was not looked up in high esteem. So it's not to be just throw caution to the wind. It's like, hey, when it's inevitable, it's going to happen. And so you don't have to run from your own death. It's okay if it comes down to it. And so here's the idea. Let me just outline it in this idea. There's really just three things I think will bring this out. One, and this comes from another book by Yamamoto Tsunotomo, Hagakure. So Hagakure is another great book. There's a lot of fundamentals in it. And one of them is this: there is nothing outside the thought of the immediate moment. So immediately you can see the relation to Stoicism, staying in the present, staying in reality. And then he goes on to say, there is surely nothing other than the single purpose of the present moment. A man's whole life is a succession of moment after moment. So just living in the moment. And so death's just going to happen when it happens. That's the idea. It's just inevitable. And in a sense that you just don't have control over it. It's going to come for you when it happens. And then secondly, from another line of Hagakure, because they have these just aphorisms in the Hagakure, and it doesn't really fit into a structure per se. So when you read it, you have this sense he's talking about one thing and another, but it's just the way it's written. The second one, and I'm cherry picking some of these, is live firmly resolved in your inevitable death. So the idea is, death's going to happen. It's inevitable, and you're just kind of preparing your mind for that.
And it's not taboo.
It's not a taboo. It's
this is just something that's just like, whatever.
Yeah. And now some people would think, man, that's just morbid.
Right.
Why are you going there? It's because there is a very strong possibility of your death as a warrior. Think about the guys at D-Day. The ramp
absolutely.
went down, the MG-42 is rattling away.
Right.
There's a very good possibility you're not going to make it to the wall. You're not, especially on Omaha Beach.
Right.
You're not going to go over that cliff. Point to Hawk. You may get mowed down on the way there on Utah Beach. It's a very strong possibility. And so those guys, I don't know, I can't speak for all of them, but some of the memoirs, they went there. They're like, hey, this is probably it. And they wrote their letters to their loved ones, and it's like, okay, that's it. And they just resigned themselves to whatever happens.
Yeah.
And that's all that he's saying. It's like, hey, and when you do that, you're not anxious. And I hope you see the beauty of this.
Yeah, I think you have your, like you said, the mental aspect of that allows you to make better decisions, I would imagine, because you're not paralyzed by the anxiety, the fear, and all these things that you've kind of come to grips with. So now you're able to clearly know. You probably increase your chances of survival, I would imagine, just by
absolutely
being at peace with this mental preparation.
Yeah. So now think about, of course, the next thing that comes to mind is Dave Grossman, the fight or flight or submit posture type of ideas. Well, this circumvents the flight. Yeah. It just cuts short circuits the flight. It's like, that's not a possibility.
That's not an option.
That's no option here. And so that's the mindset that the samurai had. That was their goal, right? To do that. And then thirdly, I love this too. Is in Hagakure. If you have this book, you should get it. Line 62 is the rule of 7 breaths.
I like that.
Yeah, so the idea of, 7 breaths, you're a medically trained guy. That doesn't take a lot of time.
No,
But it does take some time.
it does.
And so it's just amount of time.
Needed.
Yeah, and we were just talking about temperance.
Right.
That rule of 7 breaths is
That
pretty
is
good.
that is kind of temperance in there.
Yeah. So the idea is we're not going to be, there's no paralysis by analysis, but we're going to need to make a decision, right? And again, and I kind of snuck that in there, but it does fit with, mental courage, because we do have to be discriminative, and we're not being imprudent and just throwing ourselves, on landmines and stuff like that. I mean, and so some people think of Bushido as just a suicidal type of philosophy, but not so. Not so.
Right. The kamikaze.
Yeah. Now, they disascribe. Bushido code subscribed for seppuku when it was appropriate, but the idea is, live with honor, but die with honor too. Mm-hmm. And so the idea was seppuku that you ritually disembowel yourself. You could restore your honor that was lost. So you got to admire that without actually doing that yourself. I think there's a way to restore honor without actually doing that. But and so I think that the best way to describe mental courage is the parable of the rainstorm.
Okay.
So the parable of the rainstorm, it's beautiful. It's a line from Hagakure. It's almost like you could excerpt it, and it would stand alone as a standalone type of poem. So he writes this: there is something to be learned from a rainstorm. When meeting with a sudden shower, you try not to get wet and run quickly along the road. But doing such things as passing under the eaves of houses, you still get wet. When you are resolved from the beginning, you will not be perplexed, though you still get the same soaking.
Being an SUT instructor comes to mind.
Oh, absolutely. Exactly. You're doing ambush recox, and you try not to get the water down your crack,
right?
And you just what? Just go for it, man. Just let it go.
It's going to happen.
And that's where he's going here.
Yeah.
Just kind of go there early. It's like, look, and if you think about this, getting soaked in the rainstorm is like, look, you're going to get soaked. And the same idea is you're going into an inevitable death. And so if you follow this logic, you just accept death as an outcome, as a high probability of an outcome.
To me, so I'm trying to separate the mental preparation, if you will, from the mental courage. And what's coming to mind is the fact that you're going to spend the time going through what would be normally an uncomfortable mental exercise for the benefits of it, okay, down the road or because of your chosen profession. Is that fair enough? I mean, we talk about the fact that, death is kind of, it's taboo. You're not supposed to be discussing it, let alone,
as you're sharpening your sword.
What are you doing? Oh, I'm just imagining my own death. It's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might need some counseling, Chief, but no, he's doing the right thing. He has the courage to.
It's a resolution.
It is a resolution to deal with that and kind of get yourself right.
Yeah, it's like a mental will, right? It's like, hey, my last will and testament. So you're going there, and you can already kind of see that happening, and it's not the end of the world, even though it's your end of your history.
Right.
End of your personal world, but
your time here on earth.
Your time here on earth. And so they lauded this ability to do that, rightly lauded that. And here's the seatbelt here. We're not being imprudent with our lives, and we're taking prudent risks. We're not having suicide charges at machine gun nests where we know we're going to be toast. We're executing, our mission in a way that makes sense, and it's doable. It's a doable goal,
Right.
but we're like, hey, this obviously as soon as we roll out of the wire, I mean, it's a good chance somebody's going to get killed. That's okay. I mean, that's what combat's about.
It is. Yeah.
Also with police. I think this goes hand in hand with a lot of police, unfortunately, are, they could get maimed, killed out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good place to go to as law enforcement.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a dangerous job.
It's a dangerous job, and it gets
you know,
more dangerous.
Yeah. Someone's got to go in and do it. Right.
Yeah, and so you
and we expect that. We
yeah.
expect that of our warriors. We expect that of our law enforcement.
Yeah.
Right. That was some of the complaints that we had down there with the school shooting situations, where it's like, why didn't you guys go in?
Yeah. Absolutely. That case in point.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say here is for Bushido, and what I wanted to bring out of this book is death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. The worst thing, there are worse things that can happen to death. And that is like dishonoring the United States, dishonoring your unit, being a coward and your buddy dies because of you. Yeah. That's terrible. And there's worse things than dying. Yeah, dying happens, but that's why, I mean, soldiers die. That's what you do. That's part of being a soldier, part of being a warrior, a Marine. It's going to happen. And, we've lost, you can just look at all the wars we've had. We've had, metrics, and that's just part of it. The sacrifice involves loss.
Yeah. You brought up D-Day. So what comes to mind, of course, is that famous scene out of Saving Private Ryan,
Yeah, you have to pay for it in blood and treasure. To freedom costs blood and treasure. Yeah. And I also bring this out too. I love Shakespeare, and so Shakespeare is kind of he's a conundrum. Shakespeare is a troubled guy. In the poem, he's visited by his uncle's ghost, who tells him that his dad, his father's ghost, because his uncle killed him. Anyway, so he's kind of getting his mind ready, and he says there's a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. And so the idea is, the fall of sparrow, the fall of dice, the flight of an arrow, it's all controlled by God. So the idea is God's providence are his most holy, wise, powerful, and preserving and governing all his creatures and their actions. So even flights of arrows, how the die fall, everything. It's like even when a sparrow falls. And so he's like, hey, he's gearing himself up. So the idea is, as a Christian, you're going to die when you're supposed to. You were born at a certain time. God decided where you're going to be born. Look over in Acts 17 if you doubt that. He decided where you would live, all that stuff, and when you're going to die. And when you kind of go there in your mind, you go, hey, look, it's okay. And it's not fate. This is providence. This is God's working out all things for his glory and our good. And so he kind of goes there. So I think it's important it's an important check. And we look at Bushido, that's not a Christian philosophy, but there's some aspects of it in it that are very important and useful. And so this just kind of reminding our listeners, this is kind of an eclectic type of cherry picking of philosophies that actually work. But definitely, the whole point is mental courage is a huge aspect of courage. If you don't go there in your mind, then you're faced with a situation. You go, "Whoa, I wasn't ready for that," and that could be bad.
Yeah, I mean,
you're behind the power curve.
I hadn't even. I don't think people think about mental courage. I mean, I certainly didn't. The two that come to mind, of course, were physical and moral.
Now, of course, but a lot of and a lot of people that
confuse the two, thinking mental courage is moral courage. It's not.
And I'm not saying that courage doesn't happen without preparing yourself, because a lot of Medal of Honor recipients that I've read, boom, they just do it and that's their go-to. But what harm could it do to put the best foot forward and have that mental preparation? And that could help us even more. May we be I think to be mindful of that is to not do that, to not have mental preparation, it seems to be lacking. We're preparing everything else,
Right.
Our bodies, everything else. Why not get your mind ready?
Absolutely.
And so,
Makes perfect sense.
yeah. And then, so we looked at moral courage, mental courage. And then one thing I bring out in here is mutual courage. So I have the 3 M's because it's a alliteration.
Yeah, how does that work?
I don't have the physical because I'm using it as mutual courage. So when I look at physical courage, I guess I'm seeing as a corporate aspect of courage.
Oh, okay.
And so the idea is mental courage is also, it's like the mind.
It's all tied in.
It's tied in.
Yeah, I see.
So you're doing the action, but so in mutual courage, I'm looking at, okay, as a body of men, how your courage can actually be beneficial to those to the left and right of you, and how that can be.
Well, you hear
make
that
a difference.
You hear that term thrown around quite a bit. Courage is contagious.
Absolutely, it is, and so for that reason, I love how Napoleon once said that he caricatured fear as someone that needed to be driven into the ranks of the enemy, and so corporate courage really does that. That's why he said that moral is to the physical 3-1. The moral being, hey, the metaphysical aspect, the courage, the intangibles are 3 times as important than are the physical. I think that's true. Because just for this example alone, if anyone's ever served, with as a team, and you're doing something dangerous, can attest how important it is to have that other person to the left and right of you, and how important that is to kind of stabilize yourself. You're going to go do something really dangerous and you're by yourself. It's a lot different than having your buddy there with you. You're like, hey, he's sharing that danger with you.
Right. Yeah.
And just having that person there.
Yeah. Misery loves company.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just easier when you got those guys just, they're going in. It's just like, we're going to, you'll share the suck too.
Yeah. I'm a lot more courageous when I'm in a stack with other guys.
Yeah.
Where I'm just by myself and I'm like, it's just a completely different feeling. And so I wanted to use here, I would be remiss not to mention Admiral James Stockdale, who was a Navy pilot in in Vietnam. But he was advocate. It was a Stoic. So he read Stoicism. He applied that to his life. And so he is known to have said, once his plane was shot down over the skies of Hanoi, that he's saying, I'm leaving behind the world of technology and entering the world of Epictetus. And so he ended up in the Hanoi Hilton in that hellhole there, to conditions that were very brutal. And, he ended up living a lot like, in some sense, Epictetus, where he did not have a lot of control over his environment. And he had to draw from the truths in Caridion to kind of help him get on with his life and not just go to despair.
Right.
And because it's happened for those that, that I have never experienced being a POW, but from the books I've read, 5 Years of Freedom, and I haven't read Admiral Stockdale's book entirely, but I did read his speech that he gave. He gave a speech, and he talked about the Stoic warriors triad. But anyway, when he looked at the Enchiridion, and he memorized these lines. So as he's in prison, as he's getting shackled and discombobulated, and they're just having a good time hurting him. He was not only to go there in his brain and go to a good place, but he helped others. And so he developed an acronym. Acronyms. I mean, he's a guy after my own heart, right? Or I'm a guy after his own heart. But the acronym is BACK US. So BACK and then US, United States. And admit, bow, stay off the air, admit no crimes, and never kiss them goodbye, and unity over self. And so just those being polite, right, and not saying something incriminating you at U.S., not agreeing to something that could be egregious, and then just the idea of the unity created with this courage. His courage was able to be communicated to his fellow prisoners, and that's really the aspect I'm trying to get here. Is it like you said, it's contagious, and he was courageous enough not just to think about himself. And so I love this idea of living for something bigger than yourself.
Well, all of that mental courage that you had talked about, that mental preparation came to play. I mean, had he not been familiar with Stoicism, I don't think he would have fared as well.
Yeah.
I mean, think of the second and third order effects. I mean, he had a huge impact on like you're saying, on all those POWs.
I mean, I have read the accounts of those that served with him in the prison, because they're still serving.
That's right.
Right. And because of his courageous stand and helping them, they were able to keep going. Yeah, his example. So that's the idea that I think one aspect that sometimes is missed in courage. And so if you have it could really be a detriment to your. I mean, we've seen that. You probably no doubt served, and you've seen someone done something cowardly, and you have this sickening feeling, and there's a sickening sense in the ranks that somebody did something really cowardly, and you just kind of want to cleanse yourself of that funk, of that thing that happened, and so just conversely, those good vibes, if you will, from somebody that's willing to stick it out there, that can kind of help you out. So something I think we also want to do with these segments is look at principles. So we kind of looked at this, and this helps us to reminds us of what to know and then what to do. And so this is the virtue that really puts steel in our spines, in all its aspects.
Now, courage, one of the things that you got there, which I really like, is as far as how it ties in with the other virtues. I think you make a point there in the book where it's the, courage is where the other virtues are at their extreme, right?
That's it. I mean, that is the principle. Principle to know is courage is every virtue at its testing point.
At its testing point.
Yeah. So whatever it is, you just pass it through the grid. And so these two really, I mean, if you look at all five of these, you can't be honorable.
You can't have honor without integrity.
Yeah.
You can't have,
Exactly. Yeah. Just any of them. So they're all intertwined. Yeah. But yeah, the beauty of this is courage is every virtue is at its testing point. So you're tested with, there's a good chance you may lose your life if you keep going. Yeah, you're tested with that. There's a good chance you could lose your job if you say something about XYZ, right? Mm-hmm. And just pass that through the grid. And so, these days, it's so easy to just kind of go along with the flow.
That's what they're hoping. That's what they're hoping we do.
Yeah, and that's the dangerous. One of the more dangerous things is just to kind of fall asleep, and just kind of with the whole tolerance thing, and then kind of conform to the
tyranny. Tyranny hates a courageous warrior.
Yeah, no doubt.
Tyranny cannot survive.
Yeah.
When there's courageous warriors.
No doubt. I wanted to go a couple of places in the scriptures too. I think a lot of guys are listening to our podcast that you'd be familiar with that. But if you're not familiar with it, in the book of Revelation, the very last book of the Bible, in the very last chapter, if I get there, and this is kind of off the cuff, I didn't know I was going to go here, but it says, Revelation 22, and this is the last warning that Jesus gives in the Bible, the last warning of God in the Bible. And he says, verse 15, let's see if I got it right. But outside are dogs and sorcerers and sexually immoral and murderers and idolaters and whoever loves and practices a lie. But not only that, but let's see if I can find this. He says, those who lack, help me out. This is what you shouldn't do as a preacher, is just kind of go off the cuff when you find this. But let me see. And this is why we have Google.
It wouldn't be the Pineland podcast if you
right.
weren't all over the place.
But, oh yeah, sorry. I was in the wrong chapter. Here we go.
There we go.
So 21:8, and you got to love Google on the fly.
There you go.
Right?
Computers are awesome.
Yes, but I could have never done this years ago.
Pretty soon we'll get Chat GPT to be one of the hosts on this thing.
Okay, so 21:8, Revelation 21:8. But the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death.
Yeah, which is everyone who's not courageous.
Yeah, just think about that. So it's just kind of a big deal for you to be morally courageous, to take a stand for what's right. Now, I mean, that kind of goes home, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's not, it's not the fact that you're going to escape death. We're not going to escape death. But how you go out, go out fighting for a cause, go out on the right side.
Yeah.
We're all going out, but do what you're supposed to do.
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Joshua chapter 1. Now, 3 times. This is the leader of the people of God. They're going to go into the promised land. He's the successor of Moses. Joshua is commanded 3 times to be strong and of good courage. Be strong and courageous. 3 times. Be strong and of good courage. Joshua 1:6, and then verse 7, only be strong and very courageous. And then again in verse 9, have I not commanded you, be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid.
Yeah, he's getting ready to cross the Jordan and whoop some tail.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to clean that place out.
Yeah, and the command that corresponds prior to doing that is, go there, have mental courage. That doesn't have 21 explanatory points that Joshua is supposed to. I think he's supposed to get that, And the idea is, at some point, you could nuance this to death, but courage is courage, and courage really, I didn't mention that, but it just means stout-hearted.
Yeah, I like that.
You don't have a heart that's going to fail. It's like not for the weak or the faint-hearted, right? As they say in a school. I don't know if they still say that.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope they are. But I think instinctively, I like to think that instinctively we're born knowing right from wrong.
Yeah.
I think we learn evil as time goes on. So I mean, again, do you need to be taught righteousness? Sure, we're supposed to, right? We're supposed to continue to learn that. But like what you said, be courageous on what you know. Instinctively what you know what right is, and be courageous and stand up for it.
Yeah. I mean, and you find this all through the Word of God too, is the command to not fear, to be courageous, take a stand. And then, so that's, in and out of uniform, and that's something that I've been challenged with, is the courage to kind of be the same guy all the time. To be the man inside and out, so we talked about that with integrity. So the person who I am inside is also the person outside. Right. I'm not just some other secret person, and then I just kind of show you somebody else. It's like, right. I'm the same guy. And so I'm also not a Sunday Christian. I live, I have my creed on my sleeve, if you will. I nail my colors to the mast.
The summer soldier, the sunshine patriot. You're the same guy all the time, regardless of if it's good, bad, weather's crappy, whatever.
And that's the guy I want to serve with.
Absolutely, don't we all?
Yeah.
I mean, we all admire those people. We all enjoy being around those kind of people. the phony always exposes himself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you just know it. Most people just know it.
Yes. So the two principles here. One, we have like it comes from be, know, do. So right. So to know, the principle to know is courage is every virtue at its testing point, and then do is it kind of goes back to Bushido and what we've been talking about. Is you sense danger, but embrace it willingly.
So to be more courageous, is that what you were talking about on the moral, or I'm sorry, on the mental courage? Is that kind of how we develop? I mean, to be a more courageous person, I guess is if you have a concern like, well, am I, if in that situation, what would I have done? What will I do? Is that really where that mental courage part comes in, where you're really having to sort of meditate through some of these situations and try to reconcile, what the appropriate response is, what and then just hope that you do that, when the time comes?
Absolutely. I think this works because conversely, I think through, hey, like somebody is picking on me, right? And I go, if you do this, then I'm going to do this. You know what I mean?
Right.
You kind of go there like, hey, if that guy does X, Y, Z,
yeah, you're in the room.
Then it's
you're in the corner and you're watching.
Yeah.
And, your head's on a swivel and you see someone that's just acting weird.
Yeah.
And you're starting to roll. Now your brain's starting to roll through the. And you're starting to develop scenarios and you're keeping an eye on them and you're.
Yes.
So I think, is it sort of the same sort of thing as that sort of mental preparedness?
Yeah, I think if you just flip that in a good light, and that's also good to do that. I mean, you're obviously, in the active shooter world and all the nonsense going on. You need to be a one-man PhD. Your head's on a swivel and you're protecting your family. I think on this note, though, you also say, not just somebody's picking on me, but you're thinking, hey, if they say, like people say, hey, you will. That gun's coming out of my cold, dead hands. So they're already going there. There's an example.
Yeah.
That's mental courage. They're like, look, you're not taking my guns, man.
I think everyone has to figure out it's when they tell you it's time to get on the boxcar.
Yeah.
Are you getting on the boxcar or, I mean, where is the line at? And you got to kind of be thinking about all the, these things sort of progress along. And you don't want to wait too late because it'll be too late. So you really kind of have to. I think you kind of have to mentally prepare yourself, kind of like, what am I going to tolerate? What am I not going to tolerate? And sort of figure out maybe some, what the proper reaction is, what you're actually going to do. I mean, I think these are some of the things that just if you're in charge of a family. I mean, I think you have sort of a responsibility to sort of. Be kind of looking down, the road a bit, right, and being kind of proactive.
Absolutely, you have. I mean, we need to be proactive with. That's something we always talk about as a husband, as a father. We're looking at for outside influences that are pernicious from coming into our house.
Yes,
and so we're looking at those, and we say, no, I'm not going to allow that, to infiltrate my house, and so you're, at least that's how my dad was, and that's how I try to live, and
the appropriate response to it. There's some responses that are probably going to work better than others. You really kind of need to think about, how you're going to handle a lot of these things. I think people or families are getting hit more today than probably anything else in the past that I can think of. I mean, other than like really bad times in history, but in recent history, I think families are being assaulted by a lot more challenges than I certainly recall growing up.
Yeah, I wonder if you would permit me to do this, Mike, since you're on the other side of this table. But I can't help but using one more example from the Word of God.
Let's do it. We got time.
The one I want to use is very famous, and I don't know if everyone knows it, but it's the three friends of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel 3. It's very famous, and you have Nebuchadnezzar. He has this dream, and then it kind of goes to his head. It's not supposed to, but the image that is crushed with a stone that's cut out of heaven and it destroys the whole image, it's not meant for him to be prideful. It's supposed to demonstrate that the glory of God will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea, and the church is Christ, is that rock, and the church covers the earth and will destroy all these other empires. But when you go into Daniel 3, we find that he sets up the image, and it's a lot like, strangely similar to this the dream, and then he promptly commands everybody to bow down to it, and most people do,
Right.
but they don't, and they have the courage not to, and also there's a stiff penalty that goes along with not complying.
Right.
And so it's like, hey, look, hear ye. They're told, hey, if you don't do this, you're toast. And I love what they say, and I think it's important at this point to bring it out. But they say, even if we know that the God of heaven can deliver us, but even if he doesn't, if he chooses not to spare our lives, we're still not going to comply and break, the first and second commandments by worshiping this image.
Right.
And I love that, just that stand that
Well,
they
again,
take.
it's
courageous,
sort of
and they're together.
It's kind of like it kind of brings out what you've just been talking about. So they had the courage to just do the right thing. They were at peace with the fact that there was going to be a stiff penalty. They were willing to pay it, not a problem. And they also had the courage of being in a team and being together and not going it alone.
Yeah. And then, of course, what happens is they're thrown in the fiery furnace.
That's right.
Okay, and we don't want to mention this, and as they do, there's one like the Son of Man who's with them in the fiery furnace. And of course, there's men that are killed just throwing him in there.
Because it's so hot.
It's so hot, or 7 times hotter than it normally is. But then as they're there, they come out unscathed. So their clothes are not singed. And everybody else that had been approaching that were gone, because the king was so incensed that they wouldn't worship this image. But yeah, my whole point is they just say, hey, look, we're not going to do this. We know it's wrong, and we stand together. And that took mental courage. I think that, I don't think it's a stretch that as, everything was leading up to this point, that they went, we're probably going to go in that furnace. And they just said, hey, we're going.
Yeah, we're going.
We're going. And so they have the mental preparation already there. And that's why they said, look, even if he doesn't, the God of heaven is able to deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we're still not going to do it. I think that's not a stretch to say, hey, look, as I serve, the God of heaven is able to preserve me out of this battle and bring me back safe. He can bring me back from the shift that I'm on right now. But even if he doesn't preserve my life, I still can't lose, because if I have faith in Christ, I can't lose. And death is the entrance into glory. Right. If you're a believer. So you just can't lose.
There's no shortage of warriors that'll tell you that's exactly what happened to them. Yeah. That they came out on a situation on the other end that they did not expect to come out. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I hope you guys also are encouraged from that. They're very much encouraged from it. And, this is also something I think we also need to just focus on. And so, if I can just leave with this, it's courage is the virtue that enables us to sacrifice for our families, our loved ones, so that our nation can have a tomorrow, even if it costs us our today.
And it's available on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or right, the 5 Warrior Virtues. I mean, this is where this stuff's come out. I think we've done a pretty good job of at least articulating these virtues. So, if you're sitting around going, what are warrior virtues? I think you've had an opportunity to at least get a nice taste for what's in the book. But the book has a lot more. So enjoy the book. We wrote it for, all those warriors out there trying to return to first principles, right? Mm-hmm. So we're hoping that this book helps do that. All right, thanks people, and see you next week. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Pinelander Podcast. If you enjoy our unique content, please consider supporting our sponsors. SOF News, providing special operations news from around the world. It's where Paul and I go to keep abreast of what's going on within the SOF community. Check them out at sof.news. Blacksmith Publishing, been serving the warrior class since 2013. They have great titles written for warriors by warriors. If you're looking for excellent reference material or just want to unwind with a great novel, be sure to check out the bookstore located at blacksmithpublishing.com. And if you're looking for some cool Pinelander apparel, head on over to the general store located at pinelandergeneralstore.com. That's all one word, pinelandergeneralstore.com. Have a great selection of shirts, hats, jackets, sweaters, stickers, patches, artwork, and a whole lot more. Check out the store at pinelandergeneralstore.com. If you're interested in helping develop our country's next generation of warriors, please consider donating to the American Agoge Project. The mission of the project is to foster an environment producing able-bodied citizen warrior men of fine character. And we'll be officially launching the project in 2023 in celebration of Blacksmith Publishing's 10th anniversary. Until our next meeting, stay mentally and tactically smart, physically and spiritually strong, and socially astute. To each other we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. May God continue to bless Pineland.